Welcome to Story Tapestries and World Storytelling Day. Me llamo Carrie Sue Ayvar. My name is Carrie Sue Ayvar, and it's a pleasure to be here and share a little story with you today. We all need stories. Mi abuela, my grandma, my bubby, Sora Libby. She taught me that we could travel around the world back in time into outer space and still make it back in time for lunch. En un cuento, in a story. Stories fit in every size suitcase. So let's travel a little bit around the world and have a little fun, especially as so many of us are stuck inside right now. So I'd like to share a little cuentito, a little story about dos amigos, two friends. That's American Sign Language for friend. Como dos amigos abrazando, like two friends hugging. And yes, I washed my hands. I scrubbed them. So these two friends, they love to play with each other, como nosotros, just like us. And the two friends I'd like to talk about today is Senor Wiggle, Mr. Wiggle. He likes to wiggle. Oh yeah, he wiggles all over the place, just like a little worm, como un gusanito, like a worm. And his best friend in the whole world, Senor Waggle. His name means go back and forth, and he goes waggle, 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 waggle. Now, they didn't live anywhere near each other. Mr. Wiggle, he lives all the way over here. Mr. Waggle lives all the way over here. Whew, that's a long way. But they loved when they got to play with each other. They would play. Oh, are you ready? Wait, I'm sorry. Are you ready? Are you ready for some fun? For some fun. Let's play together. Let's play together. Everyone. Everyone. I wrote the song and sometimes I even forget it. Let's see if you can do that with me. Ready? Take your two fingers. Are you ready? Cross your fingers and turn them out. Are you ready? Are you ready for some fun? For some fun. Let's play together. Let's play together. Everyone, everyone. We can play even if we're far away from each other, and we can certainly share stories. So, Mr. Wiggle, he lived all the way over here, and he went inside his house, and popped inside, closed the door. He wasn't born in a barn, and he was inside. But his best friend was doing the same thing in his house. He lived all the way over here. He opened his door, went inside, closed the door. He wasn't born in a barn either. And he was inside his house. But one morning, Mr. Wiggle se despertó. He woke up y decidió que iba a jugar con su mejor amigo. He decided he was going to go play with his best friend, Senor Waggle. Mr. Waggle, he couldn't wait. He opened his front door. He popped his head out. He closed the door. And he started on his way to his best friend's house. He went arriba y abajo, up the hills and down the hills. Arriba los cerros y abajo de los cerros. Up the hills and down the hills. Arriba y abajo. Up the hills and down the hills, arriba y abajo. Up the hills and down the hills, arriba y abajo. Up the hills and down the hills, arriba y abajo. Up the hills and down the hills, hasta que por fin llegó a la casa, until at last he came to his best friend, Mr. Waggle's house. That's a long way to go. Tocó la puerta. He knocked on the door. Gritó, he called out. Senor Waggle. Escuchó, he heard. He listened, but he didn't hear anything. He went to the back door. And he called out again. Senor Waggle. Wait, he heard something. Está dormido. His best friend, Mr. Waggle's taking a nap. Ah, voy a tener que jugar otro día. I'll have to play another day, another time. So he went back home. ¿Cómo fue? How did he go? Up the hills and down the hills, arriba y abajo. Up the hills and down the hills, arriba y abajo. Up the hills and down the hills, arriba y abajo. Up the hills and down the hills, arriba y abajo. They really live too far apart. Llegó a su casa, he got to his house and he opened his door. Se metió dentro, he went inside. He closed the door because he wasn't born in a barn. He took a long drink of water. He had a little snack. And he decided he would take a little rest. That had been a long journey. And he fell asleep. Now, meanwhile, back at his house, guess who woke up? Senor Waggle. Oh, that's right. He opened his door. He popped his head out. He closed the door. And he thought, hoy sería buen día. Today would be a great day to go and play con mi mejor amigo, with my best friend. I'm going to go see Mr. Wiggle. And so he did. He went up the hills and down the hills, arriba y abajo. Up the hills and down the hills, arriba y abajo. Up the hills and down the hills, arriba y abajo. Up the hills and down the hills, arriba y abajo. Por fin llegó a la casa de su amigo. At last he came to his friend's house. Boy, that's a really long way. Tocó la puerta. He knocked on the door. He called out, Mr. Wiggle. He didn't hear anything. He rang the doorbell. Ding dong, ding dong. He called out, Mr. Wiggle. Escuchó algo. He heard something. He heard, está dormido. He's sleeping. He must be taking la siesta. He's taking a nap. I guess I'll have to play another time. He regresó a su casa and he started back home. ¿Cómo fue? How did he go? Arriba y abajo. Up the hills and down the hills. Arriba y abajo. Up the hills and down the hills. Arriba y abajo. Up the hills and down the hills. Arriba y abajo. Up the hills and down the hills. Arriba y abajo. Up the hills and down the hills. Let me tell you, that's a long way. Senor Waggle se metió en su casa. He went inside his house. He took a long drink of water. Had a little snack. Unas zanahorias, some carrots. I think even some broccoli. He decided to take a little rest. Now, later that afternoon, al mismo tiempo, at the very same time, los dos amigos, the two friends, se despertaron. They both woke up. They opened their doors at the very same time. Salieron de su casa. They popped their heads out and left at the very same time. They even closed the doors at the same time. Because they weren't born in barns, right? And they started to go visit each other. How did they go? ¿Se acuerdan? Do you remember? Help me now. Arriba y abajo. They went up the hills and down the hills. Arriba y abajo. Up the hills and down the hills. Arriba y abajo. Up the hills and down the hills. Arriba. And there on the top of un cerrito, a little hill, they saw each other. Oh, Senor Waggle. Mr. Wiggle. Oh, they were so happy. They gave elbow bumps. That's right. And they jumped up and down. And they danced. They didn't get too close. They stayed 6 feet apart, I think. But they played and they played. And they got to play on the hillside. They started to roll down the hills. And then they climbed up again. And then they rolled down the hills. And they climbed up again. Oh, they laughed and they jumped and they played and they had the best time until it got late and it was time to go back home. And so Mr. Wiggle said, hasta mañana. See you tomorrow, see? And Mr. Wiggle said, sí, hasta mañana. We'll see you tomorrow. And if not, we can talk via Facebook Live or something else. And so they went back home. You know how they went, right? Up the hills and down the hills, arriba y abajo. Up the hills and down the hills, arriba y abajo. Up the hills and down the hills, arriba y abajo. Up the hills and down the hills, arriba y abajo. Up the hills and down the hills, arriba y abajo. They were really tired when they both got home, but they had had a great time. They opened the doors, se metieron adentro, they went inside, closed the doors, had something to drink, something to eat. They brushed their teeth, washed their faces, even got bathed and put on their pajamas. They read a good story or two or three, and they laughed, thinking about the beautiful day they had just had and how they were able to share stories no matter where they were. They called each other on the phone. Buenas noches, good night. Buenas noches, good night. Talk to you tomorrow. Hasta mañana. Y así fue, and so it was. They slept all the night and had very pleasant dreams. And on behalf of Story Tapestries, me llamo Carrie Sue Ayvar. My name is Carrie Sue Ayvar, and I want to say thank you to you as well. So I'd like to leave you with this little one. My grandson's favorite. Take your two hands, and we're going to clap, because I love to clap, and say thank you. My hands say thank you with a tap, clap, clap, clap. My feet say thank you with a tap, tap, tap. Clap, clap, clap. Tap, tap, tap. Shh, shh. Time for nap. Duérmese, go to sleep. Wake up! It'll soon be time for another story. Thank you so much for joining me in Story Tapestries. Stay healthy, stay safe, and enjoy your days.